They say good fences make good neighbors, but nobody ever tells you what to do when your neighbor builds a fence 8 feet into your own property while you're at work. It was a Tuesday that started like any other in my quiet corner of Dayton, Ohio. I've lived in this house for 11 years. I moved here right after my divorce, looking for a place where the biggest drama was whose lawn had the most dandelions. My backyard was my sanctuary, a wide, rolling stretch of green that sat at a slight angle, making it feel twice as big as the neighbors. For over a decade, there was no fence, just a line of old, stubborn maple trees that acted as the unofficial boundary between me and the house behind mine. I was standing at my kitchen window, nursing a mug of black coffee and watching the steam rise against the glass when I saw it. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. There was a crew, 4 guys in neon vests, unloading cedar panels from a flatbed truck. But they weren't at the tree line. They were deep. They were standing right where I usually set up my sprinkler. I set my mug down so hard coffee splashed onto the counter. I didn't even grab a jacket. I walked out onto my back deck, squinting against the morning sun, and my heart just dropped into my stomach. They had already dug the post holes, a neat, aggressive line of dirt piles cutting a path through my grass, 8 feet closer to my house than the property line had been for the last 40 years. That was the moment the peace died. To understand why this hurts so much, you have to understand my new neighbors, Tyler and Ashley. They moved in 6 months ago. They're renovation people, you know the type. They bought the house from the estate of old Walter, who passed away at 94, and within 48 hours there were dumpsters in the driveway. They weren't mean exactly. They were just entitled. They treated the entire neighborhood like a project they were managing. They didn't wave, they inspected. Tyler always looked like he was 5 minutes away from a CrossFit workout, and Ashley spent her weekends pointing at things while contractors took notes. I had tried to be the good guy. I brought over a plate of brownies when they moved in. Tyler took them, didn't invite me in, and told me he was going keto before closing the door. I got the hint. When I walked down the deck stairs toward the fence crew, Tyler was there. He was wearing a moisture-wicking polo and holding a clipboard, looking like he was overseeing the construction of a stadium. "Hey, Tyler," I said, keeping my voice level, professional. "I think there's been a mistake. The crew, they're pretty far into my lot." Tyler didn't even look up from his clipboard for the first 5 seconds. When he did, he gave me this half smile that you give to a child who doesn't understand how a toaster works. "Oh, hey man, the fence? Yeah, we checked the survey stakes. This is where it goes. We're finally getting some privacy back here. Walter let this place go to seed, you know." "Tyler," I said, pointing to the maple trees 8 feet behind him, "the property line is the tree line. It's been that way since the 70s. My deed says my lot is 150 feet deep. Your crew is sitting at 142. He shrugged, a quick, dismissive twitch of the shoulders. "Our contractor followed the stakes he found. He's a pro. He knows what he's doing. Besides, look at the grass, man. It's mostly weeds on this side anyway. We're doing you a favor by cleaning it up." Then he turned his back to me. He actually turned his back and started talking to the foreman about cedar stain options. I stood there, vibrating with a mix of confusion and pure, unadulterated rage. I went back inside, sat at my kitchen table, and stared at my phone. My good guy instincts were telling me to let it go, to avoid the conflict. But then I looked at my property tax bill sitting on the mail pile. I was paying taxes on those 8 feet. I was mowing those 8 feet. If Tyler wanted a war, he was going to get one. But I wasn't going to use a megaphone. I was going to use the law. The next day, I called Midwest Survey Services. The man who showed up 48 hours later was named Carl. Carl was exactly who you want in your corner during a land dispute. He was about 60, had a beard that smelled like American cigarettes, and wore a hat that seen more sun than a Sahara camel. He didn't care about vibes or privacy. He cared about iron pins buried in the dirt. Carl spent 4 hours in the yard. He had a tripod, a laser level, and a thick stack of county records. He didn't say much while he worked. He just hummed a low, tuneless song and occasionally hammered a stake into the ground. Tyler came out halfway through. He leaned over his half-finished fence with a smirk. "Having some fun with the tape measure?" he called out. Carl didn't even look at him. He just kept peering through his scope. After another hour, Carl walked up to my porch, wiping his hands on a greasy rag. "Well," Carl said, "your neighbor isn't just wrong, he's confidently wrong. He didn't follow survey stakes. He followed a set of old wooden garden stakes that were probably used for a tomato patch 10 years ago." Carl then pulled out a bundle of bright orange flags. He walked a perfectly straight line, 8 feet behind Tyler's new fence. He planted a flag every 5 feet. It was a beautiful neon orange line of truth cutting right through the middle of Tyler's new yard. "The fence is 8 feet 2 inches inside your property. Legally, that fence is sitting on your land, which means technically it's your fence. But don't tear it down yet." "Why not?" I asked. Carl grinned. It was a slow, wicked grin. "Because in this county, if a structure is on your land, you have the right to improve your property however you see fit, provided you don't violate the height codes. And since he hasn't finished the fence, he hasn't applied for the final inspection yet." I paid Carl his fee. It was the best $600 I ever spent. I emailed the survey to Tyler with a simple note. "Hey Tyler, Carl from Midwest confirmed the line. The fence is 8 feet on my side. Let me know when you plan to move it." He never replied. 3 days later, the crew finished the fence. They stained it a beautiful, expensive dark oak. They even planted $5,000 worth of ornamental shrubs along the base of it on my side of the line. Tyler and Ashley had a little fence-warming wine party on their deck that Saturday. They acted like I didn't exist. They thought they had won. They thought silence was a victory. They forgot that the land between the orange flags and the fence still belonged to me. I called Miguel. Miguel was a landscaper who specialized in creative privacy solutions. I told him the situation. I showed him the orange flags. I showed him the dark oak fence Tyler was so proud of. "I want to install some planter boxes," I said, "right along this line, between the flags and his fence." Miguel looked at the space. It was a long, narrow strip of land, 8 feet wide, running the length of the yard. "What are we planting?" I said. "Bamboo. Philostachys oreo sulcata, yellow groove bamboo, the fast-growing kind, the kind that grows 3 feet a month and creates a wall so thick a bird can't fly through it." Miguel started laughing. "You know that's going to block his entire view of the valley, right? It'll grow 10, 15 feet tall. It'll put his whole deck in total shade by July." "Exactly," I said. "And I want the planter boxes to be 4 feet tall, made of heavy-duty steel. I want them to be permanent." The next Monday, a truck pulled up. Not a small truck, a semi-truck. Miguel's crew began unloading massive industrial-sized planters. They placed them in a perfect line, just inches away from Tyler's fence, but firmly on my side of the flags. Tyler came running out of his house like his hair was on fire. "What the hell is this?" he screamed. "You're blocking my landscaping. We just spent $5 grand on those hydrangeas." I didn't even look up from my book. I was sitting in a lawn chair, right on the edge of the property line. "Oh, hey, Tyler. Just doing some improvements. You said it yourself. The grass was mostly weeds. I thought I'd add some curb appeal." "You can't build a wall," Ashley yelled from the deck. "It's not a wall," I said sweetly. "They're garden boxes, completely legal. No permit required for movable planters under 4 feet. And the bamboo, well, it's a privacy screen. You said you wanted privacy, right?" By June, the bamboo was 6 feet tall. By July, it was 10. Tyler's expensive dark oak fence was now completely invisible from his own house. All he could see from his living room window was a dense, vibrating wall of green stalks. The afternoon sun, which used to flood his deck and his CrossFit space, was now blocked entirely by my jungle. His $5,000 hydrangeas died within weeks because they weren't getting a drop of sunlight. His backyard went from a suburban oasis to a dark, damp corridor that felt like the set of a horror movie. The breaking point came in August. Dayton gets humid in August, and when you have a 10-foot wall of bamboo trapping the moisture against the dark wood fence, you get mold. Lots of it. Tyler's expensive fence started to turn green and fuzzy. The dark oak stain was peeling. There was a knock on my door at 7 p.m. on a Friday. It was Tyler. He didn't look like a CrossFit manager anymore. He looked tired. He looked defeated. "How much?" he asked. "How much for what, Tyler?" "To take down the jungle. Ashley is crying every time she looks out the window. We can't sit on the deck because it's full of mosquitoes, and it's dark at 3 in the afternoon." I leaned against the doorframe. I took a long, slow sip of my coffee. "You know, Tyler, I really grown to love that bamboo. It's very zen. But I suppose if I had my 8 feet of grass back, I wouldn't need the planters anymore. My lawnmower needs the exercise." He didn't even argue. He didn't mention the pro contractor or the survey stakes he found. "He'll have the crew here Monday," he said. And he did. It took them 2 days to dismantle the fence. They had to dig up the concrete footings, the ones they had poured into my soil. They had to move the whole structure back 8 feet 2 inches. Tyler had to pay for a new survey, a new permit, and the labor to move a fence that was already finished. He probably lost $15,000 on the whole ordeal when you factor in the dead landscaping and the mold damage. When the fence was finally moved to the correct line, I had Miguel come back and remove the bamboo. Now, when I mow my lawn, I reach that property line and I stop. I look at that dark oak fence standing exactly where it belongs. Tyler and Ashley don't have fence warming parties anymore. In fact, they rarely come out when I'm in the yard. But here's the thing. The neighborhood is talking. Some people say I was a genius. They say Tyler got exactly what he deserved for trying to bully a neighbor. But others, like Mrs. Higgins down the street, she says the bamboo was petty. She says I should have just filed a lawsuit instead of playing games. So I'm asking you, if someone quietly stole 8 feet of your life and laughed in your face about it, would you have played nice, or would you have grown a jungle? Let me know in the comments, because where I'm sitting, the view has never looked better.